flow through small businesses and mid-sized businesses like this, 3 times the amount of money actually stays in that community and flows down the street, as you were saying, from butcher to baker to the coffee maker, right? And the like, as opposed to the dollars that flow out. We would love to see, those that are making the arguments, the businesses, the other sets of businesses that are making the argument saying that this is a job killer, to look at how much are they avoiding in paying their taxes, actually, and hiding in overseas tax havens, as you alluded to. How much of them are taking advantage of externalizing these costs, as opposed to the small business owners that's paying more than their fair share of taxes, paying a higher wage so they can keep and retain their customers, because that's part of their community, and they're growing their community, as you spoke to as well. So what we like to look at is really the full economic costs here, looking at the whole system here, and what we see is that there are loads of businesses that are actually taking responsibility where government should be stepping in and helping to set some of these standards, and we can make the business case that says that we're providing these extra benefits, that we're growing our businesses, we're retaining our workers, we're providing extra benefit for our communities, and that's providing a greater service to the economy and to our state as well. So we think that there's a case to be made by looking at thousands of businesses across New York State that are doing this already, but we need to set these minimum bars because others need to only follow, right, what's set down in law, right? And so we can learn and set by example, but we could tell these stories over and over, I think, as well, to set examples for how they can boost their business and not be afraid of minimum wage as the thing to kill it, except for those that we know they're going to stand in opposition because profit alone is the only thing that drives their business. For our businesses, how do we make greater profit by providing social and environmental benefit at the same time?
No, I just sort of agree with you as opposed to ask another question. And again, I'm sorry I got here late. I had a finance committee meeting, and I'm sure you made wonderful opening statements as the chair of this forum. But again, for me, when I look at the data, big picture, over 2/3 of minimum wage workers are women. And women are disproportionately the people in a growing level of poverty in this country. So you combine our minimum wage policy with our poverty crisis and the fact that it seems to join at the hip when it comes to labor policy for women, and a disproportionate number of women working at minimum wage, living in poverty, are in fact the sole breadwinners for their families as single mothers. So minimum wage is a problem, I think all of us here are agreeing, but it actually is also the cause of some very distinct larger problems we're seeing as societies, and then we see in our communities when we have women with children who can't afford, forget going out to buy the fresh baked bread in your bakery, right? They can't afford, the food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for their children at home. And so I do see this as it's bigger than all of us. And it's an obligation, I believe, of government to address. So I just want to thank you all for perhaps being viewed as the not obvious panel to come here as businessmen and as representatives of business and say, no, we actually get it. It's bad. It's bad for us. It's bad policy. It's bad for our neighbors and communities not to pay people wages that they can live on. So I want to thank you for all testifying.
Well, perhaps one thing to point out in relation to that particular comment is when you look at the impact this would have on small business, what a lot of business people don't think about is how did the last minimum wage increase affect us? I don't know a single person who didn't adjust to it and it was fine. How did it affect anybody? I don't know any small business people, honestly, that I can think of who said it negatively impacted me. You know why? Because like I said, all of them are already paying far more than the minimum wage. It is the Walmarts and the McDonald's that we're talking about.
That's what we're talking about.
Those aren't small businesses. They're part of massive corporate franchises.
When we're We're talking about the businesses in my neighborhood. These are, you know, people who have inherited the business or people who are working for a family business. There's maybe 1 or 2, 3 employees, but that's another storefront open up in my neighborhood. That's another place where a kid, when he's coming through high school, could potentially grab a job behind a deli counter. Those little tiny networks, I think, are often, and entrepreneurial networks are often overlooked by policy. And so by increasing the minimum wage, we're providing fuel directly for those small businesses. You know, you're talking about those businesses are not the minimum wage payers. The minimum wage payers are, again, the Walmarts, the McDonald's, and that's where we're talking about generating more dollars from those massive corporations and using it to kind of raise the level of working class communities like the one I live and work in, and then giving the community as a whole more buying power to support what for me is real American business, which is that small entrepreneurial mom and pop shop.
So the key to remember as we look at the state economy going and growing the economy and growing the number of jobs as well as retaining them is that most of the studies show 70 to 75 to almost 80% of the jobs that are created by small businesses, the entrepreneurs that you're talking about in this country. So if that's the case, then we have to look at a different set of priorities that actually are in line with what's really driving the true economy and not the rhetoric that's proposed by some other businesses, the large corporations out there as well. And it's not all of them, but a number of them as well. So to move beyond the rhetoric to the real facts and numbers of who's growing jobs, who's taking care of employees, who's servicing their community and the state and the country.
So as small to mid-sized businesses, what you're pointing out to us now is that increasing the minimum wage not only will increase the buying power of the average worker and improve the quality of life of the communities, but it's not a job killer, it's a job retention.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And as we know, small businesses across the state are the economic engine that moves New York State. And
That's right.
if you're saying it, hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, goes a long way. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.